Welcome to another edition of the Pure Legal Guidance Podcast by Parlatory Law Group. Today I'm joined by partner Craig Yaris to talk about franchise law. Welcome, Craig.
Good afternoon, Tim. How are you?
Good. So franchise is one of your favorite areas of law, isn't it?
It is. It's fascinating. It's fun. Always different. So yes.
And as you and I have discussed before, it's a very interesting opportunity for entrepreneurs to kind of get a business in a box, if you will.
You're absolutely right. The benefit of a franchise is that they bring to the small business owner everything they need to get started. They advise through the corporate name. They can help with doing business as licenses or certificates. They can help with the financing of locations and lease negotiations. You name it, they've got it covered, and they've done it over and over again. So it's a proven method of starting a business.
So I want to go through it, first from the franchisee perspective and then the franchisor. But before we do that, just tell everybody basically, what is a franchise?
A franchise is basically a small business using another business's name. At its basic core, it is a, Dunkin' Donuts. Oh, am I allowed to say Dunkin' Donuts?
Sure, why not?
I don't know. Licensing, I didn't pay for it.
Well, give us some examples. Dunkin' Donuts is an example. What are some other examples?
Is an example. Subway is an example. All of the big box fast food restaurants, they're all franchises.
McDonald's,
Burger King, Wendy's. I'm trying to think. PDQ.
What about White Castle?
White Castle is a franchise also.
Interesting.
It is. Not a very big one and not a very, well-known in certain areas. I'm from the Northeast, so I'm familiar with White Castle. It is not a thing here in South Florida, though. It's too bad because every so often you just need that.
Which means that it's probably available if somebody wanted it in South Florida, right?
Possibly. Franchises can decide where they want to expand to. They don't have to, and many don't go nationwide. Many don't go worldwide. For many years, I was involved in a franchise, and we pretty much, until the last few years, concentrated in a specific area. Mm-hmm. And we did that because it allowed us to really focus on the franchisee.
Okay. So from the franchisee's perspective, so let's say that I'm in Florida and I look around and I say, you know what, there's no, fill in the box here as to what type of business. I want to open this type of a burger shop or a coffee shop in this area. What do I do?
Well, first thing we do today, we hit the internet. We hit Google. Seriously, that's what we do. We find out where their corporate office is. Mm-hmm. Find out if they're franchising in the area that you are. Not everybody does, as I said. So if they are, most franchise companies nowadays have a quick short form, contact us for more information. Mm-hmm. Fill it out. They will then, some of them, automatically send you their offering circular. That is their federal document, their state file document that outlines everything you need to know as a franchisee. Those are the first steps.
Okay. And so once I get that, and obviously, as the entrepreneur, if I decide I want to open a coffee shop, I could either get one of these franchises, or I could, just open it up on my own and make it, Craig's Coffee.
Well, yes, absolutely. But doing that means that Craig's Coffee needs to figure out where they want to be. Mm. They then need to negotiate the lease with the landlord. Mm-hmm. You're an individual. You're one person. How favorable are the terms going to be? The landlord doesn't know you. You don't know the landlord. chances are the lease then may require a personal guarantee from Craig's Coffee. So Craig is now have to guarantee the rent. Craig then needs to figure out what licenses are required. Craig needs to figure out is some landlords have a limit on the ability to have water in their location. So it is a climate change sort of evolution that certain spots can't use certain amounts of water. So can your spot accommodate the coffee shop? Coffee's made with water. Now we've got to get, furniture. We've got to get supplies. We've got to get coffee, cups, you name it, employees.
Branding.
All of those things are on Craig.
Yeah. Whereas if you decide to go to a nationwide coffee chain and open one of those, what happens?
Basically, you're going to meet with people from the franchise, and they're going to help you negotiate the lease. Many will negotiate it for you. Many will sign the lease and then just sublease it to you. So the franchise owns that. Well, owns is the wrong word. Maintains that premises. Should you decide to sell your business, they don't lose the location. They also, nationwide company. Don't you think they're going to get more favorable terms, both on length and on rent? They're also going to come in and say, okay, here's your equipment package. It's all put together for you. We'll even finance it for you. You don't have to worry about where that money's coming from. We'll help you and train you to interview employees. We'll train you to make coffee. We'll train you to the proper methods of cleaning that location. They take everything down to the look of the tile on the floor and sort of take the decision process away from you. Now, people may not like that because they want control, but it's the ease of setting up that business that makes it so just the perfect opportunity for somebody getting into a new industry.
And it sounds like you don't need as much startup cash doing it that way.
You don't, depending on the business. Most franchises will finance parts of the franchise fee, the equipment package. They'll help you with employee hiring. So there are avenues for, loans, if you will, that may not be open to somebody just opening Craig's Coffee.
So what kind of things do these franchisors look for in a franchisee? I mean, do they do background checks and
Absolutely
credit checks and things like that?
They do all of that. Many franchises will do the background check, the full background check, the full credit check, but that may not be a hindrance necessarily. It's just like going for a loan. You may not have great credit, but there's still ways for these businesses to bring you into their franchise. They want people who have the drive to run a business, but don't have all of the know-how. So they want people who are willing to learn. They want people who want to be in the business. And so many times it's through personal interviews, both with the higher-ups within a franchise and possibly with current franchisees. So they'll allow those current franchisees to interview these potential franchisees and see how they'll fit in with the group.
So if I own a coffee shop in one town, I might interview the people that want to open it in the next town over.
It is possible, yes.
How much interaction is there between the different shops?
Depends on the franchise. In the one I was involved in, there was, depending on how far the different owners were from each other, there was quite a bit. They would, I recall several who would even loan each other employees. They had great relationships. Many times there are people who don't want to be involved with others. I think a better system is where everybody is moving towards one goal.
So if I want to get a franchise like this, at what stage should I, you talked about getting the initial documents and everything. At what stage should I have a lawyer take a look at this stuff and help me to understand? Not me, obviously, somebody who's not a lawyer.
The minute, well, I would argue,
or maybe even me.
A lawyer that has himself for a client, isn't there an expression? Not saying.
I suppose.
Yeah, but I would say almost from the beginning. And that's because you're going to get a document from the franchisor. It's going to be 70 to 100 pages. There's legalese, there's accounting, there's employment issues that may come up. So I would argue that you should have that attorney involved from the beginning.
Is there any room for negotiation on these, or is it just, hey, this is what the deal is, and so take it or leave it?
Usually it's take it or leave it. But if you were to go into a franchise meeting and you're looking for more than one location and you can back that up financially, there's probably more room for negotiation. But for the most part, franchise agreements are take it or leave it. This is the agreement. This is the franchise fee. This is the royalty, the advertising fee, the marketing fee. They're usually set in stone.
Now, a lot of times when you have these agreements that are supposedly set in stone, then after the first or second year, all of a sudden they call you up and say, hey, those numbers that were set in stone, we've just increased them.
Yes.
Does that happen here too?
Yes. It can. And every franchise agreement gives the franchisor the right to increase those fees. The franchise fee, though, is usually upfront and doesn't change much once the agreement is signed.
Right.
The ongoing fees are the ones that can go up, and every agreement will have a limit as to how high they can be raised. So you'll know in advance your royalty may be 6% of your weekly gross. And that could increase with X number of days notice, but only by a certain percent. So it's not that they're all of a sudden going to say, yeah, we're at 30% now. The majority, though, of franchisors will usually increase the royalties for new franchisees or for I'll call it the re-up. So your franchise agreement runs 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. At the end of that time, you can sign another agreement, but you're bound by the new fees. So many franchises will wait until that renewal period to raise the fees on the current franchisees. It's never a good idea to annoy the people that help grow your business.
Right. Well, and that's one of the interesting things here is the relationship between the franchisee and the franchisor, that's not really supposed to be an adversarial relationship, right. Is it?
It's not. The idea is that the franchisees are who are going to help you grow your business. They're the ones who are going to be out there talking to clients, to potential new franchisees just at a party. And so you want them to be happy.
And I mean, I just think about some of the stories you hear in the news about these national chains where, some incident happens and, somebody's refused service or, called a name or something in some, small coffee shop somewhere. And then all of a sudden the corporate headquarters gets inundated with all these protests. Is that something that the this interplay between franchisee and franchisor that they try to control? Or I mean, how much are the protesters really protesting the wrong people?
You're absolutely right. It is completely protesting the wrong people. It's the local franchise owner who is responsible for the employees. They are not employees of the franchisor. So when that employee says something they shouldn't, it's that local individual shop that the problem is. It's not the parent company. Now, as you were speaking, immediately came to mind the The incident that happened at the
It's okay. You can say the name.
at the start, there was a Starbucks incident. Now,
Right.
Starbucks is not a franchise, so that is actually, that anger is placed in the right place. It's not a franchise. They are all owned by Starbucks. All of the employees are employees of Starbucks. So Starbucks is responsible for the behavior of those employees.
So we should protest at Starbucks headquarters, but
Please
only at the
don't.
local Dunkin' Donuts.
That's correct. Yes. Yes.
So switching gears a little bit on the franchisor side of the house, if I've grown a business and I decide, okay, you know what, I want to start opening, shops. How do I do that?
The first step is to decide what the competition is. Because everybody thinks their idea is terrific and everybody would love it. We need to know if that's in fact the case. Are there any other people doing this? If there are quite a few, entry is going to be a little bit harder. You want to talk to your current clients. You want to find out where they're from. How far are they traveling to reach you? Is a franchise really the way to go? Maybe there's sort of an in-between. There's a licensing. So instead of jumping into franchising, you may have a friend who also has a coffee shop. And you may decide to get together and say, okay, we're both going to call our our coffee shops the same name. So we're going to pay each other a fee of each other's business as a license.
So I could open my own Craig's Coffee and pay you a licensing fee.
Exactly. And you don't want to jump into franchising. You don't want to open one store and say, okay, I'm going to be a franchise. There's a lot that goes into it. Every state that you want to open in has their own filing requirements. And when I say filing requirements, I'm talking about the 100-page Uniform Franchise Offering Circular. New York requires you to file it with the Attorney General and have it reviewed every year.
And is that a publicly available document?
It absolutely is. Every franchise that offers franchises in New York files that document with the Attorney General. You can take a look at any franchise you want to. As long as they're in New York and have complied with the law, their document is there.
And what kind of stuff is in that? I mean, does it have revenue figures?
It does. It goes from the actual franchise agreement is part of that document. It has revenue figures. Again, every state's requirement is a little bit different on how many years. And the revenue figures are of the parent company, the franchisor,
Right.
which is based upon the royalties, the franchise fees, the advertising fees, the marketing fees. You'll see how much each location pays towards their marketing and advertising for the whole chain. You'll see how many stores they closed in the past year. You'll see how many stores they project to open in the coming years. So all of that, and these financials, they are not just done by the in-house accountant. They have
Right.
to be certified
Audited.
financials.
Yeah.
They are audited. It's an expensive process.
And this is regardless of whether the parent is a public or private company.
Oh, yes, absolutely. That does not matter.
And does it only identify the specific financials to the franchise side of the business?
Yes.
So if I have a company that I'm doing the majority of my business online, say shipping coffee to people, and then I start to open coffee shops.
No.
That publicly available document, is that only going to show the revenue from the shops, or is it also going to have all my online sales in there?
If the company is the same and the business is the same or similar, it's all in there.
Huh.
It would be broken out. We sell coffee online, and here is the revenue from that. We have our franchised locations. Here's the revenue from that. but that information would have to be in there. Again, because it's the same company. So if, for instance, a franchisor has several different subsidiaries that hold leases, every location that takes an income from, let's say, lease management fees, it's reported on that in the franchise offering circular. Anything that has to do with the business.
Wow. So, and this may be getting a little bit too into the weeds, but yeah, of course I sit here and think, well, then if I'm the parent company, then maybe I would open a subsidiary and just keep all the franchises under the subsidiary. That way I only have to report that subsidiary as opposed to everything else.
Except if you own that other company, the franchise offering circular will say, Tim also owns a company, XYZ, that offers online sales of coffee. You don't include the numbers, but it's in there. So you're still making people aware of it, who will then sit across from you and say, okay, how come I'm not getting, why is that not offsetting a part of my franchise fees? Why do I have to pay extra for the coffee that I'm selling in your franchise location?
Okay.
It's all there for the conversation of the franchisee.
So now, of course, me being a criminal lawyer, I always think of things, and a civil litigator, I always think of things, when they go wrong. You deal with clients to make sure that things are set up right the first time so that they don't get in trouble. I do it after they've already screwed something up. What can go wrong here? What are some of the horror stories?
What could go wrong? Bankruptcy of either the franchisor or the franchisee. So even after meeting with people and doing background checks and credit checks, you can't always account for the franchisee's ability to deal with people.
Right.
You can't account for their ability to keep employees, their ability to pay employees properly, to run their business. So franchisee bankruptcy is a possibility. Landlords could evict a franchisee for non-payment, and you may have no idea that happened. A franchisee could just close up in the middle of the night. Then what? So, those are some of the horror stories. Franchisor bankruptcy happens, but it's sometimes less likely because there's a lot more feeding going on. You've got more locations, but it is possible. And so what happens to those locations if the franchisor goes bankrupt? Every location is a creditor to that franchisor at that point. So, it could get messy, and it could get messy fast. Employee issues. You need franchisees to know the employees are theirs. You can't tell franchisees how many hours the employees work, how many days,
right,
when, where, how. Nope, they're yours as the franchisee.
But you can dictate how many pieces of flair they have on their suspenders.
Yes. Pieces of flair are always important. I left mine off. Pieces of flair, always important. It makes for a much better work environment.
But the regulating the number of pieces of flair, is that done at the parent company level or at the franchisee level?
It would be done at both places. So the parent franchisor could say, you have to have, franchisee employees, franchisees should make sure there's a minimum of 10 pieces of flair. But the franchisee could say, you need 20 pieces of flair.
And of course, that's just a minimum.
Minimum, always.
We would hope that you'd want to exceed the minimum.
I now have to go back and watch that movie like this weekend. I totally, yeah. I've got a printer that needs smashing. So.
Yes.
Oh,
So,
goodness.
So, what other pitfalls should people be looking for?
As a franchisee, you want to be able to meet with the parent company. You want to meet with the officers. If they don't let you, run. You need to have access to these people. Now, granted, you may not be able to call up the president of Dunkin' Donuts and talk to him because your tile floor is broken.
Right.
But when you're starting out, you need to know that there's people there to go to and that they're on your side. Again, it should be a symbiotic relationship.
What about specialized locations? Like there are certain shops that I think of that are in, specialized locations, like, in airports, on military bases, things like that. Is that the type of thing that a franchisee can do, or are those pretty much all through the parent company?
Everything a franchisee does is going to be through the parent company. So if you're going into a franchise, you're going into it knowing you've got people behind you. So if you want to open in an airport, you would work with the parent company to negotiate the ability to do that. As far as military bases, I don't know how the Department of Defense handles that. They very well may not be franchises. Franchisees may not own them. They may be owned by either the parent company or under a license agreement.
Okay.
I know several large franchises have locations on college campuses.
Right.
However, they're usually under a license agreement.
Huh. Okay. So they're licensing it to the college itself?
Or the food service company, yes.
Oh, okay.
Starbucks is a good example of that. They're not a franchise, and every location is owned by Starbucks unless it's on a college campus. It is not owned by Starbucks. Those employees are not Starbucks employees.
So that's a license, though.
Yes, they are licensed to use it. Go to Barnes & Noble. They have Starbucks cafes. It's not a Starbucks cafe. It is a licensed cafe. So franchises can do the same thing. They can license the use of the name for a yearly fee, a monthly fee, but it's a set fee usually. Okay.
All right. Well, that's a lot of very interesting information. It's a very attractive way to start a business.
It is.
I can imagine. So
it is. You just need to go in, eyes open, and have somebody have your back. That's not the franchise. The attorney. You need an attorney on your side as well.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you so much for all of this great advice. And if anybody's looking to open a franchise, how do they get in contact with you?
They can reach me by calling the office, 646-970-3368. They can email craig.yaris@parlatorylawgroup.com or find me online, www.parlatorylawgroup.com.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here, Craig. And this has been another edition of Pure Legal Guidance by Parlatory Law Group, where we've discussed franchise law. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.